Hi, Ben Mottershead. How are you?
Afternoon, Gary. Yeah, I'm very well actually. This is my first ever podcast, so I'm a podcast virgin. I'm very anxious, but actually, it's really nice to be on with you. Thank you very much for
Yeah,
inviting me
well,
on.
I'm privileged. You're the first company to come on. So I've interviewed a couple of wizards, which went really well. But when I mentioned it to you, you were the first one to go, "Yeah, I'm going to come on." So it's really appreciate it.
Good. Well, this it's an art form that is only growing, and yeah, I think for people that want a little bit of extra depth, a little bit more inside baseball, a little bit more inside knowledge of what goes on behind the scenes, hopefully this is interesting to them.
Yeah. So hopefully after today's episode, we'll be top 10 on Apple. But so you're the operations director for Brad, and we've obviously met a few times, met at shows, and a load of wizards came to see you guys, and you looked after us. So yeah, it's great that you're on, and I believe. Do you want to give us a bit of background around Bradite? Because it's spoken about more and more in my forum, and I've used it recently, but I'll touch on that a bit later on. So where did
Sure.
it all start for you guys?
So my dad started the business 30 years. It'll be 30 years next year, and Bradite was originally started in 1938. It was originally in Coventry. So when you and I met the other week at the P&D show, it's about a mile from there, and they used to make paint for Spitfires. So we've got that. That strong British vibe there. It was, that early 20th century ite, like Bakelite, that kind of suffix that goes on the end, the kind of high tech of the day.
Yeah.
Mr. Bradshaw came along and said, "Oh, Brad, yeah, this is what we want." So we made paint for Spitfires for a while, and the factory consequently was moved from Coventry out to the Snowdonian Hills of North Wales, which is where it still exists now. And yeah, over the years we've made paint for bicycles. We used to make, one of our claims to fame is that we used to make the gold paint for the cylinder head on the E-Type Jag up until about
Oh, wow.
1952. But I did a little bit of everything, in truth. The company got subsumed within HMG Paints, who then did a joint venture with my old man 30 years ago. And yeah, it's a family business. It's Ruth, my sister, myself, and my dad David, who's kind of retiring but not really retiring, shall we say? At
Does he
74.
still keep an eye on you, Ben?
He absolutely does, as he should do. He comes in a couple of days a week and tells us what for, and then leaves us to it. But yeah, he took it over in about 1996, and for about 5 or 6 years. Bradite was the only brand we had, and he was selling paints for, and this was when Bradite did about 500 products. There was absolutely, this was kind of in the concept of the day when complexity was valued. It was like, all of the paints only had numbers as names. It'd be like, oh, I quite like the E2365S or whatever. It was keep the customer in the dark as much as possible. Ramp the complexity up as much as you can. And so we sold a very small amount of a lot of different products. And so he did that for about 6 years. And then he got into the kind of high-end deco, posh paint revolution that was going on. And so Little Green was born. So the larger side of the business is Little Green, and Paint Library came along later. And so a lot of our time is spent thinking about high-end posh paint and deco with my Little Green hat on. But the Bradite side of the business has always been the original element of the business. It's been where we came from. So the technologies that sit behind it, the epoxies and the polyurethanes and the high-end raw materials that always need to be pushed into a paint that's going to be painting ships or painting exterior metal or marine or whatever it might be. That technology has always underpinned it. So we've always had a really good technical base, and we've always tried to make products that work really well as a starting position. And so Bradite, Yeah, like I said, it started from complexity. I would say that's the only way to define the original offer. And I arrived here about.
When you, sorry to interrupt, when you said about the various loads of products and stuff, what were they for? Just all industries, or
Oh,
was it for
everything.
domestic painting, or what was it?
No, no. We had a marine range. We had an
Right.
industrial range. We had when I arrived 16 years ago. I think we had about 15 different two packs. We had about 10 different polyurethanes. We had paints for painting the interiors of pipes for gas and water and things like it was we if you wanted it, we'd make it for you. You know, the idea was that we were ultimately flexible. And I suppose in some ways as well, when you're a little business, you don't want to hitch your wagon to one pony. Do you know what I mean? You don't want to say,
Yeah.
right, that we're just going to put all our eggs in one basket with one product. You think, oh, if we've got 58 products, at least if half of them are rubbish, and actually nobody buys them, half of them are going to be great. It's a kind of risk management strategy as much as it is everything. Like, oh yeah, well if Deco really booms, we'll jump on that, and if we get run on marine, then we can jump into that. But then, of course, you don't specialise and focus and get very good at one thing. So
Yeah, and then you don't want to say no to any particular company or industry,
that's
because
it. And so you end up being helpful to your big customers. Say, oh, you know what, the big boys don't want to make us this really annoying little product that we only buy 2,000 litres of a year. What do you think? And you go, oh, it's 2,000 litres. It's a little bit more business. We'll take it. Because you've got to keep the lights on and you've got to keep things turning over. And so yeah, when I turned up 16 years ago, we did paint. We did an underwater paint for motors underwater for the gearing, like like But when we sold, we'd make a batch a year. And we'd hold all the raw materials, and it just wasn't a very profitable way of doing business. And I know this isn't a business podcast, but I think it's always good for decorators to see the other side and try to understand the drivers for the business. And that, I suppose for us, trying to do both, support decorators, support the customer, but make a good profit. That's win-win-win.
yeah, it's interesting to know the background, isn't it? Because unless many people would think, oh, it's just come out the last few years. It's a product which does everything. So it's really interesting to hear the technology behind it and why it is a good product.
That's it, honestly, Gareth. And I would say the focus on simplicity, which is everything that Bradite tries to do nowadays. It's four main products, but in truth, it's one main product in the one can. That's almost the flip side of the coin to that past of complexity. It's simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. Actually, what a lot of people do every day is very simple. And actually, if you can make their lives easier, and if you can help them, not cut corners, but just smooth the process out, make a process slightly easier, then actually that's a way to win customers, and then they'll come back to you. And if you can do it well, then that's the ball game, really. So
Yeah.
I would say the history of Bradite is what's informed the current Bradite mentality. And I think
Yeah.
we're all products of our history, but I think we kind of looked at our history and went, oh my goodness, like this is we need to move to a better place.
Yeah, so you've gone from multiple products to a handful, essentially.
That's it. No, honestly, I'll find the old product list for you. I think there was 200 or 300 products.
Oh, wow.
And we took a while of chopping kind of 10 products, 20 products, the interior pipe, green products and stuff like this got chopped pretty early on. And then eventually we just took the chopper to it, and we just said, right, actually, which products do we think can sell? Which products are really useful? Which products kind of are future proof? And we kind of got 4 or 5, and we settled on them. So it was a full scale revolution at Bradite, really.
So when did the original Bradite go into kind of domestic decorating? Your white, available in white. It was available originally in what finish?
Yes, well, we've been doing some level of Bradite decorative probably 15 to 10 years ago, but this was very cheap and only available through a number of suppliers. the one can, which is really we in essence we work upstream with the chemicals industry. That's how the paint industry works really. When you're making paint, you've got a pigment phase, you've got a resin phase, and you've got an additives phase. You either get clever pigments, that's your titanium dioxides and something there to try to innovate and try to do something special. You find a clever resin, or you do something with your additives. And it was the resin that was the real game changer in Bradite 1 can. And that probably came to the fore, I would say, 7 or 8 years ago now. We started experimenting with that. And it was quite expensive. You can pay 50p a kilo for a resin, Gary, as you can imagine. And then you can go as high as £3 a kilo. And if the resin is, 20, 30, 40% of your total formula, this is a significant, the difference between it being 2 or 3 times the price is significant. So it was an expensive outlay, but the technology jump that this gave us was really large. And so, we were originally looking for some sort of adhesion primer. And then from there we started to think, actually, can we modify the pigmentation and turn this into a top coat? And then we started looking at stain block additives that we could put in. And we had colleagues who'd worked, in the past with products where it tried to be everything to everyone. And then naturally, again, the business, the financial heads in the business said, well, we've got one great product, why don't we diversify it and create 10 products that kind of come off it? And actually what he said is that actually you lose the essence of the simplicity when you do that. And he said, actually, Ben, come on, this looks so promising. If you could make me one product that does so much, primer top coat, stain blocking, fire retardant, anti-mold, all of those things, and try to get it in one and drive that, to Decorators. He said this could be really, really successful. And so it was about 6 or 7 years ago that we just started to think, like a good idea doesn't come at once. And I'm sure like with your podcast, you iterate, don't you? You kind of go, oh, actually, this would be quite nice, and then you build on it, and then you build on it, and so it didn't come in the space of a week or two. It probably came over a year, and we just got feedback and just started pushing it out into the marketplace, and realised that actually people were responding quite well to it. So it's an interesting one. If you don't mind me, just keep rambling here.
No.
It's the family business element that makes it slightly different here, because I've been here 15, 16 years now. I'm 42. My old man's 74. He's still here. I'll still be here. At the P&D show, rabbiting onto people in 30 years' time. And when you've got that kind of length of vision, you can do things in a different way. It's not like you're stepping in and you're trying to be, the boss who gets the results. It needs to show particularly good earnings in the next 6 months, or in the next year, or in the next 2 or 3 years even, because that's the time that you've got before you sell a business on, or before you retire, or whatever it might be. If you're as a family business, like I said, I think we're now the largest independent family-owned paint company in the UK. But it allows you to go, long-term vision here, what do we want? Where do we want to place our chess pieces on the board? What do we want to move into? And so you can build a product, iterate on it, and start saying, oh, actually, I want to add a little bit to do it. I want to do a little bit more of this. I want to see if I can improve this element of it. So it's
certainly had that feeling, when we visited you. It's very much a all open plan kind of family feel to it. One thing that's stood out for me from the visit was, not compromising on what you're putting into paints, because of, obviously raw materials go up and down, but because you control it, own it, you just want to keep that high level, and that really stuck with me.
No, I think you're spot on, Gary, like that. The short-termism of purchasing totally clashes with the long-term aim, which should be to try to build confidence in your consumer, in your consumers. So, TiO2, which is the main cost that we bring into any paints. Whether that's deco, protective, whatever it is. Actually, that can jump 50% in a year. And if that's your biggest spend, and you're a boss who's trying to show a certain level of profitability, you've got no choice but to cut back. And actually salami slicing your whiteness, your opacity, your brightness in your product, customers notice this stuff. Whereas as a family business, you can kind of say, oh, rats, we're going to spend X million on TiO2 this year, we're going to spend X million plus a bit more because the prices have gone up. But actually, we told the guys at the P&D show that we don't change our formulas, and that's important to us because they're going to be there next year, and we're going to be a year after that, and 3 years after that, and 10 years after that. And actually, consistency in life, especially in uncertain times, with COVID and wars and all the rest of it. Actually, people want to see things that are consistent, British made, and consistent. And if you can say, actually, we're going to still be here trying to make as good a product as we can make, and we're not going to change anything, and you can rely on it. I think, I don't want to tell you what decorators think, because I think a lot about them.
I think the truth of the matter is conversations go all the time where people are like, oh, this paint just seems different, it's not going on as well, it's not covering as well. And then they go, oh, we've spoken to manufacturers. Like, no, nothing's changed. But, we're not daft. We kind of use it day in, day out, and we know when stuff changes. So, yeah, it was really enlightening when you told us about what potentially can happen. So the profits are slightly better for certain companies.
That's it, and that's the reality of being on the other side. You and the difference between a PLC, where they're reporting their earnings quarterly, and that new boss needs to show it. And if one of the main levers he can pull is changing his raw material makeup, then of course your formulas are going to change. And so it's something we can guard against, and it means that our profitability kind of jumps around a little bit as a business. But it does mean that we can at least say, listen, when you buy something of ours, you can know that it's not going to change. But sometimes there's a shift in the marketplace, and you get a pigment supply that goes bump, or a resin supply that moves or changes something, and it's difficult to guard against those things. But in the vast majority of cases, yeah, and with our first one can iteration 2 or 3 years ago, we brought out a white, and actually we didn't make it opaque enough. And quite a few of our people that used it said, Ben, it's not good enough. And the great thing about being at the P&D show and being available at shows online, etc., is actually that people can say that, and you go, yeah, okay. And you can choose to ignore that, of course, but I don't know, I think there's a famous book somewhere called like Ignore Your Customers and They Will Go Away, or something like this, like actually you ignore it at your peril. So actually,
painters are not going to go away.
Well, they'll go and use somebody else, won't they? So so we then have to go back to the lab and say, yeah, we just had 10 people at the P&D say this isn't opaque enough. Let's make it better. And so
on that subject, Ben, what makes whites difficult, and also yellows, oranges?
Yes.
What for people that are trying it and they're like, oh, actually, it's took, like I used Bradite recently, so white on white or off white, 2 coats, where there was sort of some marks or whatever, attaching an additional one, and that's kind of standard to me in some ways, because you need most paints a primer undercoat, 2 top coats. But yeah, just it's interesting for people that don't know what kind of makes that difficult.
You can build. Essentially, you can't have everything, and that's really upsetting to me that you can't. But you can build a very opaque white matte paint, like a cover, like a first coat wash or a cover that will have a decent level of titanium dioxide, calcium carbonate, and the I'm trying to think what the commercial name is. Essentially, there's an opaque resin that goes within the paint, and when it dries, it gives a great opacity. And so you can build a very nice matte paint that gives you a good opacity and a good whiteness, and that technology's been around for a long time, for 20 years. But that technology doesn't sit well with your stain blocking and your scrubbability and your adhesion. And so it's slightly, it's in your pigment phase. It sits in your pigment phase, and it creates this kind of refraction of light, kind of these clear kind of resin spheres create this refraction of light, which causes this nice opacity. So you can have somebody make a fairly cheap, one coat almost, like one coat, certainly two coats, white matte paint, no problem. But I can't give you that plus sticking to everything, fire, mould, top coat, undercoat. I can't do the other stuff. Yeah. So it is a little bit of a, you do spend one and get the other, and so we can improve it. You can put a little bit more TiO to it. There's definitely an option there. It's expensive, but it's definitely an option. But the other opacifying agents, if we're going to call them that, are kind of off limits to you when you're trying to do a really high tech one product fits all in this kind of functional category. Yeah. So I can make you, if we're thinking, how much does it cost to make Bradite 1 can as a product, you can make an incredibly cheap vinyl matte paint for less than £1 a litre. There's lots of other costs that go in there, canning and manufacturing and stuff like that, but you can make it, and you can make it quite opaque. But your Bradite 1 can is going to be almost twice as costly as that because you're putting all these extras in. But the opacity is something that like I said, you sacrifice that when you're trying to get Class 1 scrubbability, when you're trying to get exterior wear resistance and things like that. So there is a trade-off. I suppose the quick answer to the question is there's a trade-off where we try to find the right balance. I suppose it's that.
I guess on certain colours, again, it's a trade-off, right? So it's just a balance with all the colours and everything else that's happening there where it makes it difficult.
Yeah, the yellows and greens are notoriously poor for opacity. Again, it comes back to the economics of it. If people loved yellows, then you'd make a yellow base, and in some products we make a yellow base, and in some we don't. For your greens and your oranges and things like this, the pigments that are readily available to us just don't have a lot of hiding power. There's not that much hiding power in them. So they just need an extra coat. Back in the day, you might create a base. Before the colorant systems that we now use for most of these existed, people would make a red base and an orange base and a yellow base and a green base, and you could do that as long as the economics supported it. But it's, like I said, it's how many people want, those yellow bases and those lower transparency bases move so slowly that it's, you're asking a Brewers or a DDC or a smaller outfit to hold bases that might only move fairly rarely then. And so it's, as well as selling it into the decorator and saying, oh, this is what functionality it's got, you're also selling it into the distributor and saying, oh yeah, this should turn over this much, and this should give you, this should make you a certain amount of profitability. So you're pitching it to two. You're selling. You're not just selling to one person actually. You're selling to the end consumer. You're selling to the decorator, but you're also selling to the distributor who's looking for profitability as well in there. And so if you do a load of work technically on fairly rare bases, that don't sell, they're not going to thank you for it. So it's a difficult balance.
Makes sense. Appreciate that, explaining it. So, for those that haven't heard of Bradite, what can it go on? Or what can't it go on is probably easiest, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it almost is. I mean, it's a challenger product for some of those other multi-surface products. I'm definitely not going to mention them by name, but I think we all know who they are. But the great thing about the 1 can is, it's a primer top coat, so it can go on. In this room, it could go on plaster, it could go on wood, it could go on metals, it can go exterior, it can go interior. If we just want to talk about what else it can go on, beyond the other kind of two other major players in the marketplace, it can go on plastisol for cladding. It can go on your melamines, so people want to do a kind of kitchens or things like this, upcycling, IKEA furniture, things like that. Because it has some stain block in it as well, again, which competitors don't have. You can be painting kind of resinous hardwood. So if you get a hardwood which has got kind of a resinous bleed to it, so like a sapele or something like this, you can do a first coat which locks it in. You can do a second coat, and then a third coat, you've got absolute coverage. And so you can stick it on almost anything. Like I said, there's glass. Tile, again, is one that our competitors can't normally get. And I'm not suggesting that loads of people are going around painting necessarily glass and tile, but it gives you a feeling for how strong that adhesion is. You've also got a stain block on this resinous wood, the water-based stains, food-based stains, nicotine stains. It's not going to do heavy knots, but it'll do, people, spray it in fire-damaged houses, pubs, things like this.
There's one of our members sprays it on McDonald's drive-thrus, like the green which you get.
Yeah.
So I remember speaking to him a few years ago, and he's just like, it's just an amazing product. Just goes on so easy, very super durable, obviously. So he loves it.
It's got Class 1 scrub rating now, so we're happy with that. It was always anti-mold. In truth, the anti-mold legislation is very, very loose. So actually, you can say anti-mold on almost anything you want, as long as you've got a soupçon of anti-mold in there. But we sent ours off to an independent laboratory for testing, and it's come back very, very strong. So kind of mildew, mouldy areas, we've bumped up that antifungal in it, so it's now suitable for that. It's got sorry, go on.
That's all right. What finishes does it come in?
So we've got an eggshell and a matte.
Yeah.
It's a 25% eggshell. So, satin, again, talking to people at shows, people come along and say, oh, a satin would be nice. And we looked at the satins in the marketplace, which are kind of 30-35%. And actually, putting the 25% eggshell alongside it, we don't think there's, we don't think there's much between them, really. So if you could go back in time and click your fingers and you knew that the customers were going to start pushing more towards satin, you might rename it, being honest with you. But in truth, there's nothing to call between it. The eggshells, super tough. I've got it on the exteriors of my house on our UPVC windows. They're kind of white UPVC windows that are a bit tired, and we've done them in a kind of nice off grey green. It's adding a little bit of sophistication to the house.
Were they sprayed? Did you get someone to spray them?
No, I didn't. I painted them myself, actually.
Did you?
I did. I painted them myself. So
you have to see some evidence, when you did it, and
that's it. Yeah, before me, with my Bradite t-shirt on. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's amazing. Now, so just recently, just a big announcement with Bradite. You've released.
Absolutely.
Colours, right?
Yeah, no, that's it. Where have we got? We've got our colour card right here. I'll show you the one without my notes on it. So we just here we go. We've got the other side of the business is Little Green, which spends so we've got a good understanding of colour here. There's a lot of expertise in colour, and the feedback we were getting from the Bradite customer was that you can go into your Brewers and your DDCs and your independents. We've got 500 tinting machines across the UK, so it's easy to get Bradite tinted, no problem at all. But actually, the customer who you're going to and using one can on your downpipe or your railings or your windows or whatever it might be, turning up to them and saying, oh, they've got 5,000 colours in NCS or RAL or BS. Actually, it's just a total defeat of the concept of choice. Actually say, you've got a choice of 5,000, have a pick from these, 18 different NCS whites. It's just not.
It's like what we spoke about at the beginning. Too much choice, and now people want less choice.
They do. They want guidance, and I think they want, a slightly curated version of colours. And so, we've got some nice off-whites. We've got some nice mid-greens. The world's moved a little bit away from grey in the last few years. We've got some good blues here, and the kind of off-blacks as well, kind of green-black, blue-blacks that we've got over here.
So your vision for it is, say you've got a bedroom or a living room, you've literally got the whole palette of what you can use: ceilings, walls, woodwork, right?
That's it, really. That's exactly it. It's not supposed to be, a rip-off of the posh paint brands that we have. That's a whole different thing. But it's just meant to be, going back to that point we said at the beginning about, simplicity. We think that these are really simple, really beautiful colours right now, and actually, for the customer that wants an easy use product, we've got to combine an easy use product with an easy use colour selection. And if they want to go, oh, actually, stony white's a little bit red for me, I'd like something different, then by all means your decorator can grab out his NCS or his RAL card or whatever it might be, and those are all available. But actually, for the customer that says, oh yeah, actually, I want my downpipe in a nice off-white, and they go, oh yeah, that pure white looks nice, it's a choice of 4, not a choice of 44. Actually, if you can show them 3 beautiful greens, they can make a choice there, and that's all they need, and they move on to the rest of their day-to-day life, happy that they've made a good choice, rather than going, oh gosh, right, you've just added a problem to my life now because I've got to go and have a look through this fan decking, I've got to consult my partner or whatever it might be. Like, the aim has got to be to smooth the process out and allow that decorator to be cracking on and painting the gate or the UPVC windows or whatever it might be.
A couple of points that's come to mind. With it being such a good product, obviously colour drenching now is quite popular, so it'd be a dream for a painter and decorator to go in and just use the one can. And also for spraying, which is getting more and more popular, again, colour drenching, or not having to use separate primers for woodwork. Must be great for sprayers.
People, the more and more spraying, we're hearing more. I sit about 5 metres from our customer service team here, and we're getting more and more questions about spraying. We sell Bradite overseas, and we see a lot of a lot of people in Ireland are spraying, a lot of the Europeans are spraying, Dutch, Germans, Americans are doing a lot more spraying. The technology and the ease of spraying has really moved fast, hasn't it, in the last 5 or 10 years? So absolutely. There's guidance on the technical data sheet online. It's not something I can understand why people might be. With epoxies or something more complicated, people might be slightly wary of spraying, but with, fundamentally, it's just a really smart emulsion paint. So actually, you can spray it really easily. So, okay, you might need to play with your tip size a bit and your velocity, but actually, you can water it down with no problem. But yeah, we have a lot of customers who are very, very happy spraying it. So spray away, please, yes.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it sounds like almost too good to be true, your product, Ben. It's
I would say that, wouldn't I? I would say that.
No, but again, going back to our visit, it left a good impression on a number of us, and we really were impressed, and we know you care about your business a lot. We know what goes into it. We met you guys in the lab, and they were absolutely brilliant, and the testing, and you're just constantly testing it, aren't you? And it's
we're already starting to think about how we can improve it. Whether that's different pack sizes and different colours, which is one element, or new technologies that we can kind of bring to it. The fire classification, the mould and the scrubs was this year. But I think we want to be. We think Bradite. Bradite's always kind of been slightly the Cinderella of our brands. And actually, we've got a strong vision to take it to a much better place. Actually, we think the introduction of the fundamentals of simplicity. The water-based technologies that are coming through now allow you to be with speed and ease. Low VOCs. Not non-toxic, and something that your everyday decorator can be engaging with. I've got 2 or 3 products that I'll have to come back online with you and reveal when we bring them out next year. But the Bradite brand can do a lot more in this space.
Yeah, and just finally as well, again from my visit, when I was speaking to one of your lab guys, he said, because I do a lot of cabinet painting, he said it's absolutely brilliant for cabinets. He says super, super tough. So that was interesting to hear. But I just, before visiting you, I wouldn't have, said it. He said it's great for it. Something else to consider. And just to, you stock everywhere, like 500 tinning machines. Brewers, DDC, you say?
Brewers, DDCs, online, Rawlins. There's a lot of good independents out there. We've got a website. We don't sell online with Bradite, but you can see where our stockists are. But yeah, there's 500 tinting machines in the UK, and you can get almost every colour. So in some of the other Bradite products, some of the big advantages, we've got Florit paint, we've got road line paint. For those wacky jobs where you need a road line paint in blue or in some purple or in some funny colour. Again with our epoxy paint, the tinting options are quite wide and quite varied. We've also got a big promotion going on throughout January with sample pot sizes of the 1 can eggshell and the matte. So we're pushing those out through DDC, through Brewers, through all of our independents throughout the month of January and February. So again, if decorators go down there and ask for samples, they should be available FOC. So hopefully we can get this into more hands.
Yeah, and just finally, obviously, you've been in the industry a long time now, and since your father started it, and it's changed so much. Where do you see it going next stages? What are you kind of planning ahead for? Obviously, we've spoken about this product, the simplicity of it all. We've spoken about spraying. What else do you reckon is going to be coming in the next 5-10 years?
I think it's doing more. I think constantly that, like I said, the technology is getting better. I think solvents will go. Honestly, I think that's not a dramatic prophecy to kind of give out, but I think solvent base will go, and I think paint's doing more for not for less necessarily, but good value, saving people's time. We've seen inflation jump up. So actually, if you can save time, if you can save people time, if you can save decorators time, everybody's time is money. So actually, if we can help you with 1 can, get more of the job done, you can get in and out faster, you can do more. I think it's that. I think like I said, the technology is moving quite fast. I think we should have some interesting things to show you next year. But certainly, yeah, we've seen a number of competitors come into the marketplace with multi-functional offerings. So I think this kind of specialised marketplace will only grow.
Yeah, and just finally, before I let you go, Ben, obviously you said about getting decorators, and I think we should all be earning more money and seen as we were up there in amongst tradesmen. Do you do much with colleges or apprentices to introduce them to your products? Because obviously the next generation, hopefully there's going to be some more of them to otherwise we'll have to work till we're probably 80 odd or something.
No, that's it. That's absolutely it. And good decorators, as anybody will tell you, good decorators are worth a lot of money. Really, that's the truth of it. Because if you want a good job done and you want it done well, I think I was talking about this at the PND. People are becoming. Social media is only driving education in consumers in general, when they want effects or they want different things painted. And we saw people in COVID painting different surfaces and different ideas. It's not just a case of slapping magnolia on the walls. Do you know what I mean? And that's a slightly cheeky way of saying it, but yeah, good decorators. We see that they're highly in demand, and they should earn the money suitably. I would say. So working with colleges, yeah, absolutely. We've got a great technician here called Liam Blades. He's 10 years time-served decorator, so he's on our technical support team here, and he goes out. We're in East Manchester here, looking out. I can see Man City. I don't know if that's a positive or a negative. I can see them out the window here, and so we have a number of decorating colleges in the east of Manchester, and we work with them. They spray some of our paints, apply some of our paints. They come in and get involved with the team, and yeah, it's getting those water-based paints into their hands. And actually, that's where we're seeing the oil-based paints really drop off in a little bit. I don't know, in the way that we weren't seeing it even 5 or 10 years ago. So
yeah, it's interesting. I was speaking to a college lecturer or tutor, and he was saying they still teach them oil-based, but not so much now. Yeah, it'd be good to, like say, get it in the hands of the next generation and show them how good it is.
No, that's absolutely it. I always love the day two of the P&D show when we get all the college students come down. And it's lovely because, like I said, as a family business, you'll still be standing there in 30 years and you can see the people coming along and you can see, people have different ideas and people from different walks of life and so many more female decorators, even than 10 years ago. And people, diversity brings different ideas about decoration and again, that's another skill.
Right, Ben, I'm going to let you get on because no doubt you are busy running up to Christmas and.
That's it. Everyone's painting. I think we're going to run out. We're going to run out. I shouldn't say we're going to run out of paint. I think this is going to come out in a few weeks, so we'll be all right. We're not going to run out of paint. We'll be fine.
Guys in the factory.
They're working they're doing 12-hour shifts at the moment. We're absolutely pulled out. But no, it's good. It'll just drop off a cliff like it always does in about a week. Everyone will go. You know what? If it's not painted now, it's never going to get painted, and I'm just going to leave it. But
I think we're paint still around Christmas trees, can you?
They're just hoping that they can get it done. So let's see.
Brilliant, Ben. Listen, I really appreciate your time. It was a pleasure talking to you, learning more about Bradite. Oh yeah, and I did say at the beginning about me using it. I've used it just recently in my kitchen, ceiling, walls, woodwork, and yeah, it was a pleasure to work with and nice and easy. So it was,
we really appreciate that, and just not to kiss up too much, but you just yourself, innovating in this industry. It's quite a conservative industry, the decorating industry, and new forms of media like podcasts, getting information out there. Plaudits to you as well. Well done. Like I said, I'll be here for the next 30 years trying to do things better, and I'm really interested to see how successful this podcast becomes. So good luck.
I might have to get my son doing it if I'm carrying on for that long. All right. Well, you take care, Ben, and like I say, lovely to speak to you.
Very good. Have a good day.
Take care. Bye.